Welcome to the Two Doors podcast, where we open the doors to Australia's top minds in tech, talent, and transformation. Hosted by Alexander Gill, founder of Two Doors Recruitment, we cut through the noise with real conversations from leaders building the future of work. Subscribe to the show to hear and see more of these types of conversations. Let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Two Doors podcast. And we are here with David Luchi, a seasoned cybersecurity leader with a passion for embedding security into the fabric of technology. With 13 years of experience in security engineering and leadership, his expertise spans multi-cloud environments, Kubernetes, and implementing state-of-the-art zero trust architecture. Beyond his corporate role, David is a pillar in the cybersecurity community, frequently speaking at national events and co-organizing multiple meetups. He is a firm believer in empowering the community, sharing his insights on his blog, davidluchi.com, and is dedicated to mentoring the next generation of security professionals. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Really happy to be here.
I am very excited. So for anyone that hasn't met David before, he is a great communicator, originally from Brazil, and just you've been doing some awesome work. So what have you been up to lately?
Thank you. So on my professional side of things, I just finished my work at Catch. So as part of the, it's in the news publicly, Catch shut down operations in April. And I finished my work in there, and I just moved not too far to Flybys.
Yes.
Still part of the same West Farmers group. So.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. And
Thank you.
And you've obviously been in this industry for quite a while, haven't you, David? So
Yes.
Where is it all going? Talk us through a bit about your perspective in terms of cybersecurity and where it's going.
So I have a very unique point of view in that one, and I really like to kind of daydream. And in one of my reflections the other day, I was thinking, the way I see cybersecurity, especially now, cybersecurity is becoming one extra medium for war and geopolitics. The way I see it, cybersecurity will be eventually in the future the fourth emergency service. So you have police, fire department, ambulances, and then cybersecurity. So in the future, especially because everything is connected now. I was chatting with some teammates just before coming. Cars now are software, computers on wheels. Everything is connected. So we probably will need at some point some sort of like central organization helping. For example, someone got hacked. That will be a normal thing in the future. It is already. And we do have government bodies that help with that. But I imagine in the future we'll have some sort of hotline that you can call, like, I've been hacked, help me out. And they will have a dedicated team. Same way, like if your house is burning, you call the fire brigade and they come help to put down the fire. We do the exact same thing digitally for cybersecurity.
That's a great perspective. And I see it going there because people aren't necessarily talking about the ethical side, and there's a lot going on. Like, we're in this AI revolution, right?
Yes.
And it's like, well, how can you keep growing and developing? And what do you see the main difference from South America and here? Like, is there a big difference in terms of cybersecurity?
Oh, yes, there's a lot of differences. So let me start by saying that the whole dynamic is completely different in industry because in landmass, Brazil and Australia are almost the same size, but in population, don't quote me on that, but I think Brazil is 5 times bigger in population than Australia. So we do have a lot of people, which it's good in one side. It makes the whole market a little bit more competitive and better skills. But at the same time, security at my time in Brazil was not super developed. In my time, only 4 companies were doing security seriously. And I work for 2 of them. So I work for pretty much half of the market. Now they are evolved a little bit more. The banks in Brazil and all the financial sector in there, they are world reference. But everything else, not so much. So if you work for a bank, you probably are one of the good ones in security. If you work everywhere else, not so much. And that creates like a very huge influx of talents and not so many great roles. So you see the opposite of what you see here. So if you are not willing to work 12 hours shift, someone else will. So if you don't do it, someone will take you out and put someone else that will do it. If you are too expensive, someone else will be cheaper. If you don't agree with some company policy, so for example, we are now discussing here going back to the office or not, or it's the hybrid. In there, like there's no question. Like if you don't like it, you are out. Someone else will come in and take your place. Yeah. So it creates a very competitive market. But on the flip side, until maybe 5 to 6 years ago, Brazil was in the top 5 of cybercrime, which the cyber criminals are very good. So the defenders have to be pretty good as well. And most of that the same applies for the entire Latin America. They are now dropping in the rank because they are very good in scams and phishing and attacks in Portuguese language. And there's only like 5 countries that speak Portuguese in the planet. So all the other native English speaker countries, they are going up in the rank, with some exceptions of big other geopolitical big countries. But other than that, it's mainly English speaker countries, and Brazil kind of dropped down a little bit. But yeah, cybercrime is very, very active in Brazil, and you have to be pretty good to fight back.
Yeah, well, I'm just glad that we've got you over here, right? It's,
yes.
Because I didn't realize that like fraud and everything was quite large in different countries. And even growing up in London, right? Like people had the scammers where they walk by and just tap on your phone and take 20 pounds. And like, I think in Australia, we live in such a good culture and good climate that people aren't very aware, are they? But you come from different environments where that's the norm, you know, it's such the competitive nature, or it is people doing these things. And yeah, I feel that your awareness is probably a lot higher than other people.
Yeah, I've been really, really shocked when I got to Australia in the first place, how payments are handled in here. For example, you can call like a call center and give them your credit card information. This will never happen in Brazil. Like they have some very strict systems to manage all that, because they know, and Brazilians know, that they can be scammed pretty much everywhere at any time. So everyone, like the whole awareness on scams and these kind of things in Brazil is very high on most of the population. But still, as I said before, on the flip side, the criminals are pretty good as well. So for example, Google just released VO3.
Yep.
I already seen scams using VO3. So for example, I've seen one there, it's a girl calling someone and she says like, oh, I live in the same building as you, I cannot pay rent, and being like very seductive and try to get money out of it. I've seen other ones. This is a very old scam in Brazil, for example, the kidnap scam. They just kidnap, they claim they kidnap someone. And in the past, they got to the like hiring voice actors to pretend to be the person that got kidnapped, and then you believe it. Now they don't need this anymore. They use AI and they can do audio, they can do video. So you cannot, like, you are looking at the person, you are hearing the person, you cannot say that it's not real. And they've been doing that since the technology was created.
And it's evolving, right? We're very aware that people's hands are no longer feet, or, you know, the Will Smith with spaghetti. Like it's evolving quick, and yeah, it's how we leverage it. But like, you have to be aware. Like, I think, you know, no longer click on JB Hi-Fi and, you know, all of those ads. And I'd love to jump into the zero trust architecture. So talk us through what that is, and I'd love to pick your brain about this.
Yes. So just one big call out. So zero trust is a nice strategy that applies for organizations and technology. But I have my concerns if that applies to people. Because we need people, we need a collective trust to build something great. But for technology and for environments, it's fantastic. So the idea is nothing is trusted. Everything has to go through steps of verification. And everything becomes modular if you do it properly. Everything becomes modular. So if one area get compromised, that only that area will be compromised and doesn't spread across the environment. So you can simply shut down and isolate that specific portion of your system or a specific subsystem, and then everything continue operating as normal. We have the cyber big buzzword at the moment, the cyber resiliency. So everything is fully resilient. Only that part you just remove, depending how your environment looks like. If you have infrastructure as code and things like that, just rebuild it from scratch, a fresh one without the vulnerabilities, without the issues. Otherwise, you just recreating the same problem. But then you can use this kind of modularity to make it work. But at the same time, it's a very, very hard project. I think there's There's a research recently that mentioned that 3 out of 4, something like that, 3 out of 4 companies have a zero trust strategy at the moment, and it's a very, very long road to get implemented. I was very fortunate to work in an environment that was created from scratch with that, and it's fantastic. Everything simply works. Worked for 3 years, 0 incidents, like beautiful environment. A little bit boring for my SecOps people because nothing really happened. But for the business was incredible, extremely resilient. Everything worked, and it can be quite flexible. Most people have concerns on zero trust that like everything it's not trusted, which means everything is blocked, and it will be a nightmare to do my job. No, there are other ways that we can make it work. And security is always on the opposite end of productivity and flexibility. But there's ways within the whole zero trust architecture to close that gap.
And have you seen a mindset shift in appreciation for security the past couple of years? Because I feel that it was definitely something people liked, but now it's like, hey, it's a necessity. Just like your prediction of going, hey, it'd be like a service line, because I am seeing like from geopolitical, we got attacks from overseas and all of this. But yeah, has there really been a shift of appreciation that you've seen in that security space?
Yes, from my point of view, by 2 main reasons. The first one, it's pretty much in all news articles and news websites. Security is one of the well-paid jobs in IT and in Australia as a whole. I think it's top 3 from last research. It's like prime minister, airline pilots, and then cybersecurity. Which is true to some extent, but at the same time, it's not as easy as people imagine. So we have a lot more people talking about security because they think, oh, it pays a lot. What the hell is this? Let's have a look. Seems easy. Let's try to do that job. And then a lot of people come to the industry and start talking. And on the other side, for business, we had some very big breaches. And we were mentioning before, in Brazil, we are not as naive as Australians. So we know that we're going to get scammed at any time. And in here, especially because Australia was physically isolated from the rest of the world, the data that we had was also isolated, so it was less valuable. But now, US, Europe, Americas in general, Europe and Asia, they've been hacked multiple times, and that data has been in the dark web multiple times. And then threat actors were thinking and something like, wait a minute, how about that country that no one has any data of? So the cost of records in the dark web for Australians started raising a couple of years ago, and then we saw some big high-profile breaches, which is just a validation that there's a little bit more activity coming our way.
And that just means that we need more conversations like this, or how can we prevent, or what can we do? Because I mean, I'm an airy-fairy thinker in terms of like, I want a trusting world, but in reality, like growing up in London, like it's not, there's a lot of out there, and it's only going to gradually change. And there's more countries that we like a good conversation I was having with my friend, and just talking about the implementation, the gramification, on the younger generation, because it's normally they're the most susceptible, and the older generation, and just what hackers can do. And the people there have lost money and then end up taking their own lives. And so cybersecurity needs to be spoken about. It needs to be spread the mission. And what would you recommend to people that maybe are thinking about getting into cybersecurity? What would you recommend to them? And obviously you've probably written blogs, but yeah, what would you share on this subject?
The main thing I would say is you have to have a big curiosity. And you need to like to break things and understanding how things were built. So going back to my like very early days in childhood, I always liked to disassemble things to see how they were inside, and I could never put them back. But when I got to security, this was actually what clicked for me. I've always been like a very curious person, and I always love to try new things. But when I got to security, I saw like, this is my fix. This is what gives me all these happiness of like, I have big challenges every time I solve one of them. So having this kind of mindset, it's one of the biggest things that I always mention to people when I'm mentoring or coaching someone. You have to have that passion. Otherwise, the job is so stressful that you cannot sustain it. I always do an analogy with nurses and doctors in an emergency room. If you cannot stand blood, you're not going to follow medicine. If you don't have the guts to see anything that could come through the emergency doors, you probably won't stick long enough in the medicine field. Same thing applies for security, especially now that we are in some specific situations handling lives as well. So critical infrastructure, hospitals, they are all connected. And I think we already had 1 or 2 cases where someone actually died because of cyber attack. So we are getting to the point that we are being relevant enough. So if you don't have that passion, if you don't have that drive, it's really hard to stay in the industry.
And that's a huge point about personality, temperaments, and following your authenticity. Because like often people, oh, I just did that because my dad said to, or parents said to, but really driving into who are you as a person, and what about skill set? What would you recommend to skill set to really grow? Is like their courses or anything? What would you advise there, David?
So security is a very broad field. I always recommend to start with CompTIA Security Plus. Not necessarily the certification, but if you go through the entire content of the certification, once you get to the end, you have a clear view of where exactly you want to go. So there's multiple different areas. You can go to GRC, which is non-technical. So most people think like, oh, security is part of IT, so it's extremely technical. We do have some non-technical areas. So there are people that get interested on their area. If you like technical, probably from there, the second step will be looking on how operation systems work, how network protocols work. And then it's pretty much like choose your own adventure. Security is fairly new still. I think it's 20, maybe 30 years old as a profession. So it's still like under development. So there's no like single path. Anything could go anywhere. And if you look at my background and my career history, it's not like a linear path. I've been pretty much everywhere, all over the place. So, and that's pretty much what happens and what I see in industry and other people. Just put your passion, do what you think you would enjoy and everything. And once you get there, you'll learn a little bit more. And then the next step will be clearer. And then you just go and keep going one step at a time, but always with a view of where you want to go as your end goal. And then just reverse engineer back to your first step. What's the first step I can do to get one step closer to that dream? And once you do that journey and you look back, the path won't be linear. It will be all over the place, but you still can get there.
And that's a success principle in everything, right? From, car racing to anything, like any hobbies you have. It's like, yes, know the goal, reverse engineer, get there. And I think it's often a test how much you really want that. You're going to be challenged along the way, and challenges are good. They mean like, hey, what's the learning experience? What can I do to grow through this? And I love talking with other high achievers because you speak on a similar vibe, right? And we're all like, okay, well, how can we live in discomfort to grow? But you must have seen many great people in the industry. And is there any commonalities between great people in the industry, that from characteristics or mindset or even communicate? Is there anything that you see as a commonality between them?
I think the 2 most common traits that I see, either both in someone in working their area or at least one of them, is curiosity and discipline. So curiosity on like there's always something different. Threat actors, like there's this saying that defenders have to be right every day. Attackers only need to be right once. So there's always something else that you need to learn, something else that you need to explore. And on the discipline side of things, you have this pile thing of things that you need to learn. Plus, every day there's something new coming. So you have to build that discipline to always keep looking, always. On the day that you stop learning, it's the day that pretty much your career ends in cybersecurity. There's always something new, and doesn't really matter what area or what seniority or what role you have or what title you have. If you are like an entry-level engineer or a CISO, you always have to continue learning and continue developing. So, for example, Zero Trust is being talked in the industry for at least a decade. but only now we're starting seeing it's being properly implemented for the last 4 or 5 years since the Department of Defense started implementing. And I don't remember exactly when the white paper from Department of Defense was released. But from that point onwards, we started seeing more advancements. Same with AI and same with other areas. You have to learn every day. Threat actors, they have the same capabilities and the same skills as you, probably the same passion, but they don't need to follow rules. So we are already in disadvantage. So we always have to keep chasing the new thing and prepare ourselves, because as I said before, we need to be right every single day. And attackers or criminals, they only need to be right once.
Yeah, we had Stefan, who's head of cyber at Coles, and he blew my mind that hackers, they work in communities and hives, and they're all like coming together because they're all after the same thing as well. So I love what you're talking about, of just being right and defending well all and every time. Because you
and one of the I'm not trying to support the criminals or anything like that, but back in Brazil, I did some work very close, not trying to burn any bridges or anything, but I work very close with some cyber criminal groups, like tracking cyber criminal groups and taking some down myself. And what I noticed is they are really good in sharing knowledge. So they all together, if one person in the group learns something, they share with everyone, and they have some incredible training platforms. They have some incredible training programs. As I said before, they have the same budget in the same organization as us. That's why they are called organized crime.
Yes.
Because they are quite organized. They have budgets, they have finance teams, they have HR teams. And they do take care of their own people. They share knowledge, they build those skills. And this is something that we in the good side, we don't do as much. And I'm 100% on sharing knowledge and build the next generation, because I know it's a very hard fight. And the more resources we can get, the more reinforcements we can get, it will be very helpful.
Well, thank you for sharing. I love it. And that's the mission of Two Doors podcast. It's like, just sharing more information and build that community and bringing this into land. David, do you have any imparting wisdoms, anything you'd love to share with anyone watching or listening?
I have the best advice that I ever received in my career from one of my mentors was let things burn. That was the initial headline, and there's a whole explanation behind that. My mentor at that time, he was a very famous CISO. He worked for big Silicon Valley companies, and he mentioned that to me, like, let things burn. And I was really worried about a project that I had, too many things going on, too many competing priorities. As I said before, we have to defend everything, and attackers only need to get one of those, pop one of those things. And I was super worried. It was my first leadership role. And I came to him saying, like, you've done with massive data breaches, like the biggest data breaches in the planet. He was the CISO of some of those companies. How you handle that? Like, it's too much. And he said, like, yes, it's too much. Focus in what you have control over. Focus in what the things that you or, your team can handle it. Everything else, let it burn. You won't be able to take care of everything and embrace the whole world. The things that you do not have control over, yes, not saying to be negligent, but focus your efforts on the ones that you can make a change. And the rest, unfortunately, we don't have enough people. Let it burn.
That is perfectly articulated. Great place to leave this. So thank you very much for coming on. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you, David.
Thank you for having me. It's been amazing.